Baltimore, one of the oldest cities in the United States, was incorporated in 1797. Today, the city has more than 850,000 people living within its boundaries. The Baltimore of today covers an area of approximately 76 square miles. The city's growth may be attributed to its excellent geographical location and its very commodious waterfront facilities. The city is known as a manufacturing center, and its plants turn out straw hats, clothing, sugar, steel, and other commodities that are shipped to all parts of the world. Because of its association with the Star-Spangled Banner, Fort McHenry is one of the country's leading national shrines. Thousands of tourists visit this historic fort annually in order to see the birthplace of the national anthem. The buildings that are in the Star Fort are in excellent condition, even though built more than 115 years ago. From this same spot flew the flag that inspired Francis Scott Key, who was held aboard a ship in the river, to write the Star-Spangled Banner. He had left Baltimore some days before on a ship carrying a flag of truce to intercede for the release of a friend who had been captured by the British at Upper Marlborough. He was detained by the British on board the small American vessel anchored in Old Rhodes Bay while the attack was launched. From this point, he could watch the lurid spectacle of the British fleet throwing a continuous stream of shots, bombs, and rockets into Fort McHenry. At the first faint light of dawn, he saw that our flag was still there, which meant that the attack had failed. In the exaltation of the moment, he wrote the song, which has become our national anthem. At Pratt and Albemarle Street stands the quaint, old-fashioned house where in 1814 Mary Pickersgill made the American flag that Francis Scott Key saw waving over Fort McHenry. The old shot tower, built in 1828, was used for making shot by dropping hot lead down the shaft into tanks of cooling water at the base. Located at the busy intersection of Fayette and Green Streets, the grave of Edgar Allan Poe in the ivy-covered graveyard of the Westminster Presbyterian Church is a shrine for literary pilgrims from all parts of the world. One of Poe's best-known works is The Raven, which is familiar to every high school boy and girl. Edgar Allan Poe, who is considered in literary circles as a master of prose and verse, died in Baltimore in 1849 at the age of 40. Johns Hopkins Hospital and Medical School, a group of buildings covering 12 city blocks at Monument Street and Broadway, is considered by the medical profession as one of the finest hospital units in the entire world. Annually, thousands of patients suffering from many puzzling maladies enter the hospital for treatment. The hospital is known for its remarkably efficient staff and its scientific discoveries that are of great benefit to the entire human race. Johns Hopkins, the founder of the hospital, was a prominent Baltimore merchant who left a major portion of his estate for the endowment of a hospital and university which bear his name. It was the avowed intention of the founders that these institutions should be characterized by academic freedom rather than by inflexible curricula directed toward a particular calling. Today, Johns Hopkins is recognized as a leader in the field of scientific and medical research. Located in the heart of Baltimore's most attractive residential section on North Charles Street, Johns Hopkins University is one of the monumental city's most widely known colleges, as well as the Maryland city's most attractive group of buildings. The school has turned out some of the most famous leaders in the country, and its graduates are readily accepted into all branches of business, industry, and science. 3 million books a year are borrowed from the huge Enoch Pratt Free Library, which has 27 branches, and this central building known nationally for its design and system of operations. The paintings and other art objects in the Walters Art Gallery are worth millions. One of the gallery's most valuable paintings is called The Madonna of the Candelabra, made by Warfield, famous artist of the Renaissance period. Towering 210 feet into the air, the Washington Monument is the second monument to be built in the United States in honor of George Washington, the first president. The annual exhibition of work done by Maryland artists and sculptors is a colorful affair held at the foot of the Washington Monument. Encouragement of art is an important part of the cultural development of the community. The Peabody Conservatory of Music, founded by the great philanthropist George Peabody, has won a high place in the music world. One of Baltimore's most characteristic features is the rows of 2- and 3-story brick houses and their marble steps. The marble for these sparkling steps was taken from nearby quarries. Each day, summer and winter, these white steps are scrubbed. This 2-story brick building is Mount Clair Station, the first railroad passenger station built in the United States, erected in 1830 by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. Trains were up. Pimlico Racetrack, the second oldest racetrack in the United States, is located in Baltimore. The Maryland Jockey Club operates the Pimlico Racecourse under a license from the Maryland Racing Commission. Under the Maryland law, Pimlico is permitted to operate 25 days each year. 40,000 spectators can be accommodated. The biggest event of the track is the Preakness, which brings thousands of people from all over the country. St. Mary's Industrial School is best known as the place where Babe Ruth, the famous home run king, learned to play the game that made him famous. Even though the Bambino became wealthy, he never forgot St. Mary's. He is said to have given generously to the institution for its expansion program and for its maintenance. Probably the most photographed house in Baltimore today is 212 East Fiddle Street, the girlhood home of Wallis Warfield, now the Duchess of Windsor. The house has been converted into a museum and has been repainted and remodeled to resemble the house as it looked when Wallis Warfield lived in it. Many visitors go through the house daily. Here is shown the parlor in the Warfield home, with the same type furniture that was in it when Wally was a girl. The Warfields entertained many of their friends in the spacious room. This particular room is said to have been the scene of many bright and colorful parties, teas, and so forth. Wallis was very popular in her girlhood days, and was the center of many of the festivities that took place in this cheerful and very comfortable reception room. Many prominent Baltimoreans recall the popular Warfield affairs. It is generally thought in Baltimore that this sitting room was the favorite room of Wallis, because as a child she was allowed to play in it with her little friends, and when she grew older, she was so fond of this room that she entertained her beaux in it. And while Wallis entertained her beaux, it is said that a chaperone looked through a ceiling transom from a small room on the second floor that gave a view of the sitting room below. Arranged just as it was when Wally lived here, this dining room is large and well ventilated. Wally is said to have occupied the end chair when she dined here. This old Windsor stove was used to furnish heat for the dining room. It bears a prophetic message, as Wally, later in her life, was to become a Windsor. This stove was not built especially for the residents, but was made by a Baltimore firm that sold many of them to residents of the city. Here is shown the kitchen of a famous property. The coal range that you see was used by Wally to make caramels and tasteful dishes that won her an enviable reputation. On the second floor of the house was the family library. The present owners of the building have placed there a collection of newspapers which tell the development of the famous love affair from beginning to end. This exhibit shows Edward wearing the uniform of a Welsh guard. It is said that this was his favorite outfit. Wallis is shown here as she looked when she was presented at court to King George and Queen Mary. Edward is said to have witnessed this ceremony. Here we see Edward sitting at a desk before a microphone, delivering his farewell message to the British Empire. One of the most elaborate exhibits is this reproduction of Fort Belvedere, where King Edward VIII signed the Act of Abdication. The lady in this scene is Anne Christopher of Baltimore, who closely resembles Wally. This bathtub was in the house when Wallis lived here, and in spite of its age, it is still in good condition. On the third floor of the house is the bedroom that Wallis occupied when she lived here. The room is not too elaborate, but it was comfortable, cheerful, and well lighted. Hanging on the walls of the room are pictures of Wally as a baby and of her attractive mother. The bed in the room is not the same one in which Wallis slept, but is the same style and type that the now famous woman used. Little did anyone realize that this chubby youngster would one day make a king of the British Empire, abandon his crown for the woman of his choice.